Hello, I'm Caroline Fairchild, and welcome to LinkedIn News Live, where the business conversation begins with you. The Tokyo Games will be the most gender-equal games in history, according to the IOC, but the world still has a long way to go in embracing Olympians who are also moms. Until late June, breastfeeding mothers were unable to bring their infant children with them to Tokyo, and until recently, athletes were at risk of losing their sponsorships if they became pregnant. Joining me now to discuss this is Mandy Bujold. She is the longest reigning Canadian champion with 11 national titles and the only female in history to win back-to-back golds at the Pan American Games. She's also the first female boxer to attend two Olympic Games. She's a proud mom to Kate Olympia, whose initials aptly spell KO. Mandy, welcome to LinkedIn News Live.
Thank you.
All right, so we definitely have to go back before the Tokyo Games to really talk about your journey getting into the ring for these games. But let's start. You just got back from Tokyo. What were the games like this year? What was your experience like competing?
You know what? It was actually a good experience. I think, being able to come together, to have the whole, Canadian team, in one place at the same time, we weren't sure if it was going to happen, up until we actually arrived. So it was nice to be able to do that, to have the opportunity to compete, amidst everything that's going on around the world. So the experience was good. I think, Japan was, they were very welcoming. They did a really great job hosting. I had a good experience.
Well, that's good to hear because there have just been so many headlines, a lot of rumors about what the accommodations have been like for athletes, but it sounds like you had a great experience, and I hope that your teammates did as well.
Yeah, no, I think everyone that I've spoken to has had a good experience. There's going to be there's some small countermeasures that they put in place to make sure that they could host the games. Things like wearing a mask even when you're outside, that type of thing. But I mean, I think those are small prices to pay to actually have the opportunity to compete right now.
And there was not just COVID that impacted your ability to potentially compete, but because you came into the games, or there was portions of your training that were interrupted because of your maternity leave. Just tell our audience a little bit about your story and how you battled your way back and to be able to compete this year.
Yeah, so for me, my qualifying tournaments actually got canceled because of COVID. So when they were canceled, the IOC Boxing Task Force, who was kind of hosting our boxing events, decided to go back and look at some events that had happened in 2018 and 2019. So there was 3 events, and probably the only 3 events that I did not attend in my entire career, and those ended up being qualifying events. So unfortunately for me, I looked at that and that was like, well, wait a second. The only reason I'm being left off of that is because of my maternity and my pregnancy. I had to actually take legal action. I thought that I was going to be able to just bring this forward, make the IOC aware of what was happening with the criteria that they had set, and that they would just change it. But unfortunately, that didn't happen, and we had to actually go to the Court of Arbitration for Sport to fight for my spot.
And this accommodation that you successfully won, were you surprised that this didn't exist before? And in your conversations with the court system and with officials, why did they say that this didn't exist? What was the pushback that you got while you were fighting for this?
I was very surprised that, they didn't address it immediately. Even like when we first sent the letter, it was basically that it was not going to be addressed. And when we brought it forward, it was, similar to what we saw with Serena Williams a few years back when she came back after her pregnancy and she was ranked, like 300 or something. And then they were able to make an accommodation and say, okay, you can use your pre-pregnancy ranking. So we were just asking for the exact same treatment. Like, let me use my pre-pregnancy ranking in this case. Same as we do in the corporate world, right? You can't be penalized for taking time off for your pregnancy or your maternity during that time. You would come back to, the same or an equal job when you're done. So we were just trying to ask for something that was, pretty common and pretty happening around the world already. And honestly, what they were saying when we were in this conversation was, this was an important issue. This was something that needed to be brought forward, but, one person bringing on bringing this on against the IOC was just not going to happen. This was not the time and place for it to happen, which was, again, something that was really turned me off of, everything that was happening around the Olympic movement. Yeah.
Well, speaking of that movement, I wanted to get your take. Obviously, there's just been an unprecedented amount of press coverage around Olympians who also happen to be mothers, around some different conversations happening here in the US, but also your story there in Canada. Did this Olympic Games feel different in terms of the camaraderie amongst mothers? Were there other mothers who you spoke to about these issues when you got there? I'd just love to hear what that was like for you.
Yeah, unfortunately, with all the things going on, I wasn't able to actually speak to some of the mothers that were there. I was obviously following a lot of the stories that were going on. I know, they were talking a lot about, the mothers that were competing, that were breaking records. There were some amazing athletes that were just showing that, hey, you can be a mom and compete at the highest level. And I think, my story was just a part of that conversation. But there's such a bigger conversation showing that, hey, this is normal. Athletes are staying a little bit longer in their careers, or maybe they're starting their careers a little bit later, and they also want to be able to have a family. And, for us, we have to go and we have to plan everything we do in our career around an Olympic cycle, if that's your goal. So there should be accommodations and there should be things in place to support mothers who also want to be athletes.
Absolutely. Well, Mandy, I've seen a lot of people in the stream agreeing with you. I'm going to say hello to a few of the people who are joining us right now on the show. We have Stephen from New Jersey, Sikander from Pakistan, and Anna from Romania joining us here on LinkedIn News Live. An international contingent appropriate for an Olympic show. So thanks for joining us. If you have questions for Mandy about anything Olympics related, we're talking about rights for Olympians who also happen to be mothers, let us know in the stream and we'll get those questions answered on today's show. Speaking of being a mother, we couldn't resist. We have to show everyone who's joining us in the stream one of your biggest fans. Let's take a quick look at this video. Quick, succinct, appropriate cheer. I love it. What did it mean to you to be able to compete and have your daughter see you compete in this year's Olympics?
Oh, wow. You know what? That's the biggest thing. I think, she's at an age where she's really starting to learn and discover and, really just understand things. And as we were leading into Tokyo, I was explaining, where I was going and, we talked about the Olympics, knowing that I was going to be away for a little bit. So having her, be able to cheer me on, be able to watch it on TV and kind of see me even in the post-fight interview, kind of talking to her. I made a little heart sign, after my competition, and I told her I was going to do that and it was going to be for her. So I think it was really exciting for her. And I think, it's also something that we're going to be able to just continue to explain to her as she gets a little bit older to show her that, hey, just because, I had you, I didn't stop my life. I didn't stop, working towards the things that I was passionate about. I continued to do that and found a way to make that balance in my life as I move forward. So I think it's an important story to be able to share with her.
And it's a common sentiment that we're seeing from a lot of Olympians who competed this year with young children at home. I actually want to bring up a quote from one of the members of Team USA basketball, Skylar Diggins-Smith. She said, "The big thing for me is I've always wanted to have children while I was playing. I thought it was important for my son to see me play, to see me work, to see me on the court. And I want his aspirations to be in whatever he wants to be, to chase his dreams, to go after his dreams. I want him to see me on this stage." Mandy, seeing that quote and seeing what Skylar had to say there, did you ever feel like there was a point in your career where you didn't think you were going to be able to compete while having children? Because it's a common sentiment that a lot of mothers are now rethinking about this as the rules change and as they become more accommodated.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've always wanted kids. I think my husband was ready to have kids way before I was. But it was something that I kind of always was well, you know what, I want to do another Olympics. So that was always something that was holding me back. Because there's always a fear of, your body is your tool. This is what you do for work. So you need to be able to, come back at the same level that you were. And there's this uncertainty of, will I be able to come back? What's my body going to feel like? What's it going to do after I have a child? And especially when it's your first one, you don't know what that is. But now after going through it, after doing it, I feel like I've been able to have that conversation with other athletes and say, hey, like, it's possible. Like, things maybe don't change as much as you think they're going to change, and you're going to be able to come back to where you were, and if not stronger. And I actually felt, when I started making my comeback right after having my daughter, that I was, stronger. I was more fit, and things were just happening more naturally than they did even before I had her.
I think a lot of people on the stream may find that surprising, but they shouldn't, because motherhood is a crazy hard thing to go through. And I think going back to your legal battle, getting this accommodation, what was in your mind the biggest struggle that you faced doing that, in terms of convincing, that your ranking was still as good? I think you were number 2 before going into this, convincing all the parties that this was something that had to happen. What was the biggest struggle that you faced? And do you think now, given what's happened in the Olympic Games this year with much of the conversation around motherhood, that things will change?
Yeah, I'm hoping things do change. I think we are having the important conversations. The fact that we're having this conversation right now is really good as well. There was so many ups and downs in the whole legal process leading into this. There was definitely moments when I thought about, is it really worth it? The amount of stress, the amount of fatigue that I was going through, and then also trying to maintain my fitness and be in the gym and be sharp. And I'm a very type A person. I like schedules. I like routines. I like, knowing what's coming next. And, this to me was complete opposite of that. I had no idea what was coming next, or how to prepare for it, because it was just so unknown and so new. But again, I was so fortunate. I had Sylvie Rodriguez. She was my lawyer throughout all of this. She's absolutely amazing. Again, she's a mother. She fights for what she believes in. And she really, there was moments when I wanted to give up, and she was the one that kept pushing me and saying, no, this is what they want. We got to keep fighting for this, because it's going to make a difference for the future.
I think that's so interesting to compare kind of the physical stamina that you have to compete within the court, but then also, no pun intended, in the physical courtroom itself, fighting this legal battle. I saw some coverage that was saying that the legal battle was even crazier than the Olympic Games themselves. But how do you feel? How do you compare those two different muscles that you had to stretch during this time?
Absolutely. I mean, the legal battle was way bigger than my Olympic fight, 100%. And I knew, even going into it, that it was going to be that way because of the significance on, the ruling that was going to happen. And then even like you said, there were so many similarities between preparing for court and preparing for a fight, that actually, I said to my lawyer, so many times, the similarities of how she has to study, the other side and prepare for them, know about the arbitrators going in, we have to know about the judges, the way that you present yourself, your final statement. I had to do the closing statement. Deciding factors on if I was going to go to the Olympics, try writing that. That was the most intense I've ever felt. It's just been, it's been a roller coaster. There was lots of emotions. And even just leading into the actual day of the trials, it was I had a pump up song, or I had I was trying to prepare the same way I would an actual competition. So yeah, a lot of it.
Well, what's the song? We got to know.
You know what? It wasn't even you wouldn't think Tequila. I don't know why.
Okay. I'm going to listen to this after that. Maybe when I go on a run tomorrow. That sounds like a good one.
Yeah.
Well, Mandy, this accommodation that you got, not just for yourself, but for female competitors moving forward in the world of boxing was huge. But I want to bring up some of the other rights that Olympic moms are still fighting for, have fought for, get your take on some of them. According, there was this accommodation that is now valid in Canada. But moms are also asking for things like dedicated space for breastfeeding, special accreditation for childcare providers. And then there was a bunch of controversy around lifting COVID restrictions to see children during the games. Where do we go from here? There's this list, but I'm sure you have countless other things that you think will make the sport, regardless of what the sport is, more competitive and more equal footing for moms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, moving forward, the big things that we really have to take into consideration are really just bringing like athlete moms to the table when we're making decisions. And I think that's just like across the board from, the IOC to other governing bodies for different sports as well. Is just, okay, when we're coming up with criteria, or we're coming up with like how we're going to lay things out, like, does it accommodate these athletes who are also moms, and how do we make sure that they're included in there as well? So I think those are the big things, just really making sure that it's part of the conversation, and it's something that at least we're trying to make it work. I understand that there's going to be lots of steps that need to happen to make it, perfect as we move forward. But I think as we keep, building on that other sports can see, hey, well, they did this and it worked really well. How can we do that and incorporate that in our sport as well?
And not just other sports. I want to go back to something that you said earlier in our conversation around just corporations in general, and the people who are working in other industries that aren't athletes just getting recognized for the status that they had prior to going out on maternity leave. I see a ton of mothers joining us in the stream who probably aren't Olympic athletes. Maybe they are. If you're joining us in the stream right now, let us know if you also competed in the Olympics. But just sharing their insights about being a mother, coming back to work after motherhood. Anything from your specific story that you'd like to tell them in terms of their transition, or how you did come back even stronger?
Yeah, you know what? The amount of, like, a lot of people kept saying, like, how many other like mom athletes are reaching out to you? But realistically, it was just working moms that were reaching out and that were showing the support the most throughout this entire process, and actually made it like a lot easier for me to kind of go through. And I think, what they've gone through, even in the past in the corporate world, and that like they've made a lot of change and a lot of, headway, and them reaching out to me and saying, hey, like, this is really good. This is a good fight. This is something we need to keep pushing for, or just sharing their experiences with me really helped me kind of get through and keep pushing for this as well. So I think it's important to reach out and just to keep having those conversations and keep supporting each other as we move forward and try to push for this. Because I think if we do it on a united front, whether that's in sport or the corporate world, we're going to have the greatest impact.
Absolutely. And you're entering the next phase of your career. I'm not sure how much you're sharing at this point, but what's next for you? What can we expect?
Yeah, I mean, I have lots of little projects on the way. I'm always kind of looking for opportunities as well. But my husband's actually going to be writing a children's book. So I'm looking forward to actually supporting him on an endeavor, because he's been so supportive on everything I've done. I'm also going to start a small business. Community Hall is the name, and it's just going to be a support local community initiative. And then again, just looking forward to, when things do open up, or whether it's virtual, but doing a lot more speaking. I have lots of stories from my time and as a high performance athlete that I think would relate to a lot of other people.
I love that your husband is writing a children's book, and you better be the superhero in it. You can tell him I said that, because I can't think of anyone more apt, or a story that I'd rather read as a kid. This is so inspiring. Oh, Mandy, I'm just seeing so many people in the stream thanking you for your time. And Ron says, thanks, Mandy, for sharing your amazing Olympic experience. And Dawn says she's proud of you. So thanks for joining us on LinkedIn News Live. It was so great speaking with you.
Thank you for having me.
That was Mandy Bijot talking to us about her struggle and fight and persistence to get into the Olympic Games after she was out on maternity leave and missed a couple qualification matches. Thank you for joining us on the show. And this conversation is still happening. So if you want to join the conversation, be sure to check out the news module to the right of your LinkedIn feed. Or if you're in mobile, you can click into that search box. Today is a big day for LinkedIn News. We launched our 6-part series, the first episode in our 6-part series Reshuffle on the future of work. Let's take a quick look.
America is back in business. As workplaces start returning to a new normal, we're hitting the road to find out what going back to work means for a diverse group of Americans. 6 episodes, 6 cities, 6 inspiring stories about when, where, and how we are going back to work. I'm Tamron Hall, and this is Reshuffle.
You can catch the series by heading over to the LinkedIn News page, or by searching in the search bar for #Reshuffle. I'm Caroline Fairchild. Thanks for watching LinkedIn News Live.